Fam, what's up? Good morning. Kyle Henderson coming to you on this fine Wednesday, November 1st. Thank you for starting your month with me. I appreciate you guys being here. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Today we're talking college football playoff rankings. Want to get your sound off. And I want to specifically get kind of your take from where they placed the teams that are in the 5, 6, and 7 spot, because I think when you kind of look to, we knew that there was going to be some sort of curveball, I think, in the initial rankings. And the curveball to me is having Ohio State at the number 1 spot. I watched Ohio State play Wisconsin. Look, I get it. They have quality wins, and they are a team capable of winning the whole thing. But I didn't anticipate them being at the number 1 spot. Did you? The number 2 spot, Georgia. I mean, this team hasn't lost in quite some time. They've been rolling. Playoff committee chair last night, heard him speak about Georgia and he said how they played against Florida without Brock Bowers went into the meeting. That was interesting because I think when you're starting to listen to these committee chair members and how they rank the playoffs, the teams, potentially to make the playoffs, that gives you an idea. And reporters asked the committee chair member about Michigan specifically and how that kind of factors in. The craziest thing is, out of all the years for this to be taking place, with Michigan under the microscope, with the science still in, and all the stuff that continues to develop, and I get it, they're only allegations right now. The athletic director for Michigan is on the committee that decides the playoffs. Where in the world is there a more strange playoff setup than in college football? It makes zero sense, and I'm so glad that we're moving to the 12 team, not because I want more teams to be in the playoffs or anything like that. I think 8 would be really sufficient, to be quite honest. But I mean, I cannot believe that a group of, I was talking to my son last night, and I was showing him, I was like, look, these are the guys that decide the fate of the world for the college football playoff rankings. And he's like, they're just guys. Literally. It'd be like if us right here, if Josh, G-Ski, Dean Cloud, and B Terrell, our first guys inside the comment box, if us 3 had some beers, got in this room, looked at resumes, and just watched college football, and then we decided the world of the college football playoffs. Right? I mean, it makes no sense how these playoffs are put together. So I'm sure you've seen the rankings, and I'm going to get to my call in just a second. But let me kind of open up with the playoff ranking. I'll put this full screen, and we can look at the rankings as of today. Now, you have Ohio State at the number 1 spot. That was kind of the curveball that I talked about in the opening. Then you have Michigan at 8-0 on the season. I also want to get your take today about Georgia's back-end schedule, because they start their schedule now with Missouri, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. The rest of that schedule, and I think even the playoff committee said that they have played a weak schedule. I mean, they said that they look good against Florida, but overall, I don't think this is a team that has a lot of staple wins. They're a team that's put together. They need Brock Bowers, I think, to win it all. That's a good question. Can they win it all without Brock Bowers? And then you have Michigan and all this stuff that continues to surface about Michigan. And the reporters asked the committee chair members about Michigan, and he was like, look, at this point, it's just allegations, and our job is to rank the teams based off their overall quality as a team, not based on what's going on with the investigation. Still is weird because you have the Michigan athletic director on the committee. Now, I get it. He can't give, I guess, input on Michigan or whatever. It still sounds, it stinks. It stinks. Florida State at the 8-0 spot. Look, they've been playing a really good, this offense is capable, 100%. I don't like their schedule. That's my opinion, but they're winning. And they have some back-end games, and we'll look at their schedule. It's going to be tough. Washington, Oregon, they're at the 5 and 6 spot, and there you got 7 Texas, and then 8 Bama, and then Oklahoma. Clearly, the head-to-head with Texas and Alabama is going to matter a lot. And I think kind of those worst-case scenarios when you look down the road for Alabama fans is if, Ohio State or Michigan wins out, which is likely. That's probably going to happen. Florida State wins out. I don't know if that'll happen. And then you have one of these Pac-12 teams win out. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it could. And then you have Texas win out. Could it happen? Maybe. But then you would have those teams. And if Alabama was to be able to get to the back end and beat Georgia and all this stuff, could they be edged out by the fact that they lost to Texas? And is the playoff committee going to take Alabama over an unbeaten ACC and an unbeaten Pac-12? Well, this is what else is kind of strange about the seating committee. You know where the chair is from? The overall chair? And I'll get that graphic. The guy is from North Carolina State, right? So here, I think this is the graphic. So check this out. These are the people on the committee, and I'll get to my callers in just a second. These are the people who decide the fate of the world for college football. So up top, and this is who spoke last night, was Boo Corrigan, and he's from North Carolina State. Okay, he's from the ACC. You have a representative from Kentucky, Wyoming, Colorado, Navy. Those are all athletic directors. A former coach from Wake Forest. The AD from Michigan is on the committee. Like, this is ridiculous. A former Nebraska guard, like offensive guard. This is so crazy. A former Texas A&M coach and interim athletic director. Kansas State athletic director, Joe Taylor. And then I love this one at the bottom. Kelly Whiteside, a former college football reporter at Newsday Sports Illustrated. Like, the criteria is honestly laughable. It is just hilarious. All right. With that said, we have Mike calling in, leading up the show. So let's get to the phone lines and we'll start the show now. Let's see. Mike, we're trying to get to you, man. Mike, what's up, man? Appreciate you calling in.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. Hey, as far as the Michigan, I mean, it's I guess they're kind of right about that. They are only allegations right now, but although Michigan is 100% guilty of what they're accused of, and probably then some that's yet to come out. I mean, the committee, they can't hold that against them right now. If I was going to hold anything against Michigan, it would be that the toughest game they played so far to date has been against Rutgers, literally. That's the toughest game they played so far. I'd hold that against them. And only thing, that, in my opinion, that the committee should have done was put Georgia number 1 and Ohio State number 2. Yeah, Ohio State has a good resume, no doubt about it, but I think Georgia's the better team. And if I can recall from last year, just 8 games ago, it was last year, 8 games, Georgia beat Ohio State. So they should, I think Georgia should be number 1 until they get beat. And they do have the brunt of their schedule coming up here the next few weeks.
Let's talk about that Georgia schedule real quick, because I think when you look to schedules, and I think schedule strength should absolutely matter. I have Georgia's schedule pulled up here on the screen. And when you look to Georgia and who they've played so far, we've ran through it before, but here's kind of the front end of their schedule. UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, Auburn, we all watched that game. Kentucky, they blew through the Wildcats. At Vanderbilt, but now the schedule starts. Big win over Florida. Everybody was watching that game, and the committee members even said last night that they were impressed with the way that they beat Florida. Honestly, I was too. Putting up 43 points without Brock Bowers, that was impressive. Carson Beck has proven to be a quarterback that he's progressing as well. He's getting really good. But now you have number 12 Missouri, you have Ole Miss, who's number 10, and you have Tennessee. That game's on the road. Look, the reason I'm asking about Georgia right now, this is where the season starts for these guys. And I think it impacts the overall SEC. It impacts Alabama. This is a team who's won 2 in a row. What's your take on Georgia kind of in the back end, Mike?
Well, I think they're probably better than them 3 teams you just mentioned coming up there. They're probably better than Ole Miss. They're probably better than Missouri. And I know they're better than Tennessee. But Ole Miss and Missouri, they're both 7-1. I mean, they're both really good teams that have the potential to beat Georgia. But so I mean, we're going to see how that plays out. That's a pretty tough stretch for Georgia. But I don't think Ole Miss can beat them. I don't think Ole Miss can beat them. Missouri, maybe. I don't know. But I don't think Ole Miss has the physical aspect to beat them. But that's going to be. But they can. So we're going to see what Georgia's made of definitely these next few weeks coming up, because Ole Miss is a good team. Their only losses against Alabama. Missouri's a dang good team. Their only losses against LSU, I believe. And that was an awesome game, too, by the way. That's one of the best games of the year. Mm-hmm. So it's possible. I mean, depending on where them games are played, I think both them games are played in Athens. I think both them games are in Athens, and that's the other reason I don't know. It's going to be tough. If Georgia makes it through these next 3 games undefeated, they definitely deserve to be number one. And I'm not a Georgia fan. Just like I already think they ought to be number one, simply because they haven't lost a game in 2.5 years. So I don't know what else you got to do, but it's definitely going to be a tough 3-game stretch for Georgia.
Mike, Dabo Sweeney recently went off on a caller, and everybody's been talking about it from the world of college football. The caller basically pointed out the fact that Clemson, they're struggling, and questioned if Dabo Sweeney should be paid, the salary that he's been paid. What's your take on Dabo Sweeney's remarks and Clemson football, kind of the state of the program right now?
Well, Clemson's 4-4. I mean, they've definitely underachieved, no doubt about that. But I'll listen to that whole phone call with Dabo Sweeney. And I encourage everybody, if they haven't heard that Dabo Sweeney phone call, look it up and listen to it, because Dabo Sweeney went Old Testament on that dude, man. And I thought he needed to. I thought when I was listening to that caller, I thought that caller was a punk. That's what I thought. Telling him that you make $11 million a year, why are we getting for it and all this kind of stuff? Well, what the guy was 2 national championships and played for 2 others for it. Dabo Sweeney's an excellent coach. So I don't blame these coaches, man. They're only humans for pushing back on some of this naysaying that they get, and some of these callers that they get. And every now and then, Nick Saban calls out the fans. He doesn't really do it much anymore, but he's done it a little bit in the past about fans leaving early for a halftime and stuff like that. But dude, I have nothing against Dabo Sweeney. He's got a good history with Alabama. He's a good Alabama player. He played on Gene Stallings, a walk-on as a defensive back, I believe, on Gene Stallings' 1992 national championship team. So the dude's got a lot of good history with Alabama. But I'm glad he pushed back on that punk-ass caller. I'm glad Dabo Sweeney had the space to say what he really thought he could say about it. And he definitely told that caller to go where he needed to go. And these coaches do need to defend themselves, man. They do need to defend themselves. But that caller in particular, I'm glad that Dabo Sweeney went Old Testament on him, man, because he needed to, in my opinion. I encourage everybody to go, but I'm 100% on Dabo Sweeney's side. He can say whatever he wants to say. And to his credit as well, a lot of them call-in shows, the calls are screened. What I mean by that, they'll be screened by the moderator, and they'll kind of feed them to the coach as they think they need to. But Dabo Sweeney just answers the phone and takes the call. So to his credit, on that. But yeah, I'm 100% back Dabo Sweeney on that. He can say whatever he wants to say. They're having a tough year, and if that caller really wanted to hear it, buddy, he got it. So I say amen and God bless Dabo Sweeney. And I'm not a Clemson fan. They're 4-4. But from this point, I wish him luck. Other than against South Carolina, I wish him luck.
On with Mike from Austin. I appreciate you guys calling in. Call line is open 205-850-1994. I appreciate you guys joining me this morning. I think, when you look to Clemson and the things that are transpiring at Clemson, I mean, would that phone call would have existed if they would have beat Florida State? And that comes down to literally a missed field goal, right? I mean, they had that game in their hands, and fans are quick to forget, right? I mean, you look at the things that Dabo Sweeney has done at Clemson. With that said, I think that name, image, and likeness, and I think the transfer portal has certainly impacted a team that doesn't have the funds overall to compete in the world of college football, right? Like Clemson is not going to be a program that is going to have the type of funds that the teams from Texas are going to have, the teams from California or Alabama, because now you look at the space and who you're able to basically buy to play, and that's why a person like Dabo Sweeney is against that, because he can see the writing on the wall down the road that you need the X's and O's. Pair that with this, Mike. All right, I think this was a humongous loss for Dabo Sweeney, was losing Brent Venables. Brent Venables was a coach who never really got the notoriety and kind of sat in the back and waiting, right, while Dabo was up and everybody was, kind of the limelight on him and the things that he done at Clemson and the players and this and that. But without Brent Venables, and you see, that one key component that was able to leave, and he had nobody had ever went after him. That was so amazing about Coach Saban, is that people continue to go after his OCDC, but Brent Venables was a staple there. And you take him out and you kind of look to what has transpired at Clemson. It's really been interesting to see them fall. And then you have DJ Ungulele, who left from Clemson and now at Oregon State, and he looks better than he did at than he did at Clemson, right? So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see kind of Clemson's demise, but fans will turn, and you could see down the road, if this was ever to happen to Alabama, how quickly people are, to forget. Now, it's a different caliber because you have Coach Saban and you have, Dabo and all the things that Saban has done, but you saw how people were calling for, and I've seen it in the comment box, and you can't deny it 100%. There were people calling for Coach Prime to replace Saban after he lost to Texas. There were people saying that he's lost it after they lost to Texas, right? Saw it. I read it all the time. People were mad at Saban. The game has passed him by. He's not getting pissed off. Coach Prime is the right guy for the job. Bring Coach Prime to Alabama. Now it's like, okay, now Alabama has this team with the shot to still make the playoffs. Alabama controls their own destiny, to be honest. And you really haven't heard that again. So Clemson, look, I think that Clemson is done. I think the ACC overall is weak. They should have beaten Florida State, and none of these teams from the ACC should really even be, up for the playoffs. But, Florida State here keeps winning. Mike, before I go, man, give me your take real quick on this Florida State team, why we're harping on the ACC, because they're undefeated. I have their schedule up right now. They continue to win. I did watch them this last game, and to be honest, against Wake Forest, it looked pretty good. I mean, 41-16, the quarterback moves the football. Those wide receivers are very dynamic. I guess their key wins are against Duke, and of course, LSU there at the beginning of the season when they won 45-24 in a game that they also look good. So, I mean, the schedule's light. Is this Florida State team a pretender, contender? What's your take, Mike?
Well, they're good, man. They're good. Although you're right, they should have lost that game to Clemson. They're good, but I think they are beatable, and they do have a slight easy path, and the ACC is kind of weak. I mean, honestly, with Wake Forest and Duke is some of your toughest competition, and North Carolina, I mean, God bless them, but they're not great. They're just barely good. I mean, so there's a good chance Florida State goes undefeated from this point, but they should have lost that Clemson game, and I do think they're beatable. But you're right about one thing about Clemson. Losing Brent Venables was a major loss to Clemson. But you know why Clemson was good when they were given these national championships? Because of two people, Deshaun Watson and then Trevor Lawrence. Then two quarterbacks are above average, excellent Pro Bowl level quarterbacks have played for Clemson. Then two quarterbacks carried the Clemson to their golden years, and good coaching and good defense, good defensive linemen. So that's what Clemson's missing, is just an awesome quarterback. And as far as the Nick Saban thing real quick, all teams have knucklehead fans, man. But I think for the most part, the Alabama fans stick by Nick Saban. But yeah, college football fans are fickle, dude. But I think pro fans are more fickle. But yeah, man. But for the most part, I think people stick by Nick Saban, but I'm a Nick Saban man, true and true. And any Alabama fan that calls Nick Saban to replace is a straight-up knucklehead. I'll go on record saying that right now, and I wish they'd call it a Nick Saban and confront him about it so Nick Saban could go Old Testament on him about it. I mean, what else you got to go win and play for national championships? If that's not good enough, I don't know what is. But all fan bases have knucklehead fans, dude. I'm probably one of them, you know. But all right. Hey, Kyle, I'm glad. Thanks for taking the call, man. Good luck to you, dude. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, man. See you, buddy. All right. That was Mike calling in from Austin, leading off the show. Call line is open. 205-850-1994 is the call line number. We're talking college football rankings, the sound off after the first release. What surprised you? Will Georgia win out? And the reason I ask that is I think it impacts the entire world of college football. And specifically, think about this. If there was ever a time that the committee wanted to leave out an SEC team, it could be if Georgia's to slip up and then still make the SEC championship game, and Alabama gets there, and Alabama wins, and they'll be like, well, Alabama, you beat a Georgia team that was beatable, right? So you're not in because you have a Pac-12 team who was, undefeated throughout the regular season. Want to get your take on Dabo Sweeney defending himself and defending his salary and kind of the things that he's done at Clemson after a fan challenged him on the fact that Clemson is having a tough year on the season. I've watched Clemson play over the last 2 years, and I think just that trajectory is going downwards. And as I mentioned to Mike and Austin, I think that losing Brett Venables certainly impacted the program in a huge way. And he brought up a good point as well, saying that, the quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were the staples to carry Clemson during those years. You look at those great quarterbacks and what they were able to do for Clemson. I mean, bring in some natties. 586, let's do it. Hey, good morning. You're on the line with Kyle Henderson. Who am I on the line with and where are you calling in from? Hey, good morning. You there? 586, I can't hear you, man. Try to call back, man. It was a 586, man. Try to call back. You guys were asking about it. So I drew up basically the graphic, what a 12-team playoff bracket would look like as of today. Okay, so this is just a bracket, what it would look like if the playoffs were to, be a 12-team format, and this is today, just to look at it, right? So here you go. This is what, so the call line is open, 205-850-1994, 586, try to call back. This is what the 12-team bracket would look like if it took place this year. And this is based off today on November 1st. And I know this is all hypothetical, but it's fun to talk about. Okay, Ohio State, number 1, Georgia 2, 3. You know all the rankings. So let's look at the actual bracket and let's look at the matchup. So you'd have Alabama and Oklahoma at that 8 and 9 spot. That game would be taking place at Bryant-Denny Stadium. The winner would be playing Ohio State. Then you have Washington, who's the number 5, taking on Missouri. That's the 5 and 12 spot. And then you would have Texas and Ole Miss. I would love to see Texas and Ole Miss, especially if each of those quarterbacks are healthy, going at it. Steve Sarkisian versus Lane Kiffin. Yes, please. And then you have the winner would play Georgia, and then you have Oregon and Penn State there at the bottom. So there's what the 12-team playoff bracket could look like, kind of going forward. What's your take on that? I think that, I guess I'm excited to see it. I mean, why not? And the reason I think that, the 12 teams, I think it should probably be 8 teams. It's going to make for a really long college football season, which is fine. But I mean, remember, these are student athletes. These aren't pro athletes. So, whatever. I mean, they certainly are treated like pro athletes. And now that they're getting paid, they're pro athletes, right? So, but as long as, they'll figure all that stuff out as it goes along. But I think that the 12-team formula is going to work out to where it's basically just going to be the SEC teams, right, are going to just work their way in there, and they're going to then they will be pissed off that it's like the SEC teams that are figuring out their way to this Final Four, which they pretty much are anyways during the season. Call line is open, 205-850-1994. I wanted to look at a couple team schedules today. We'll do this while we wait for the call online. And I'll start with Georgia. And the reason I start with Georgia is because, this is the team. This is the team, in my opinion, that should have been ranked number one. This is the team that is built to still win a college football championship. It would be incredible if Kirby's able to win 3 in a row. I don't think he's going to do it, but he's going to make a hell of a run for it. 205-850-1994 is the call online number. I think this back end, when you look to Georgia, it's going to get dicey. But the thing about it, just like for Alabama, is these two critical games coming up next are both at home. And even that game against Florida, that was at a neutral site. You go to the Swamp, it's a different story. Not to say that they would lose, but I think it'd be a little bit tighter. I don't think you're a 14.5-point favorite. You play Missouri, and I think that's going to be challenging. I mean, Missouri, people forgot Missouri's only lost 1 game this season. And then you take on Ole Miss. A lot of people forgot they only lost 1 game this season. That was to Alabama, right? Lane Kiffin, I think he'll this could be a staple win. I mean, if he wants to be the guy after the guy, and I mean that here in Tuscaloosa, this is a game where you beat Kirby Smart. And that, can you imagine if Lane Kiffin is able to beat Kirby Smart head to head? I mean, that is going to just be so much to his resume. He's looking for a win like that. And he needs a win like that. They showed kind of the teams and the coaches that he has been able to, beat throughout his career. And I mean, it's pretty impressive. But he, still struggles against the GOAT. 586, let's try it again. Hey, what's going on? You're on the line with Kyle Henderson. Who am I on the line with, and where are you calling in from?
Hey, Kyle, it's Marcel from Detroit. How you doing?
What's up, Marcel? I appreciate you calling in, man. Sorry we couldn't get connected earlier, but welcome to the show.
I had a couple of things I wanted to say. I wanted to hear your take on it. I think Ohio State at number 1 is absolutely insane. And then you have Georgia right underneath. How could you not put Georgia at 1? I think that's a little absurd to put Ohio State at 1. Just my take. So what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think on with Marcel from Detroit. Look, my take on this at Ohio State being number 1 and Georgia number 2, Georgia should be number 1, 100%. I mean, this team hasn't lost. They're the 2-time defending champ. I think that while Ohio State and Georgia was a hell of a good game last year, and in fact, Ohio State had them on the ropes. I think a lot of people forget to talk about that from last season. But I think what they did with Ohio State, and when we look at Ohio State's schedule, I could bring that up right now. I think the thing that clearly the committee members, and I listened to that press conference, I'll upload it, some key parts last night, because the committee members, they were pretty transparent for the most part. I mean, they didn't go a lot into the Michigan stuff, and rightfully so, because everybody's scared to talk about that. But let's look at Ohio State's schedule. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because I'm telling you, quality wins play a huge role in where you are ranked in the final college football playoff rankings. That's why that win for Texas over Alabama, that was gigantic. Now you have to hope for Texas to lose at some point going forward if you're an Alabama fan. You already know that, but that's the truth of the matter, because the committee members strictly said when they looked at Ohio State's schedule compared to Michigan and compared to Georgia, that they have a stronger strength of schedule and more and marquee wins. And their marquee wins are this: going to Notre Dame and beating the Fighting Irish 17-14. That did wonders for the committee. And then also taking care of Penn State, who was inside the top 10 at that time, winning 20-12. So those 2 wins are what.
Can I cut you off?
Yeah, of course.
Because, that win against Penn State. Okay, now you look at Penn State after that week. If I'm not mistaken, they barely won against Indiana. I just think that's kind of crazy, don't you think?
Yeah, but I mean, this year, I mean, teams are barely winning against everybody. Who are you gonna put over them? Michigan? I mean, Michigan, they've blown through everybody, but I mean, we could pull up their schedule and look at them. I mean, you can't put them. I mean, you imagine the world people would have freaked out, if Michigan's number 1. And then look, Georgia. Look, I'm gonna pull up their schedule. We already showcased it a couple times, but man, they don't have who. Honestly, you sound off in the comment box. Who is Georgia? And this is for you too, Marcel. Who's their who's their best win? They don't have a better win than Ohio State does.
Yeah.
And the other thing that the committee said is go ahead.
Just looking at Georgia's schedule, the rest of their schedule, I think because I know we're probably moving on ahead a little bit, but I know you mentioned Georgia winning out. I think they can, but like I said, I think Missouri is a good team. I think they're a really good team. I think out of everyone, I think they have the most chance to beat Georgia. Because if you look at last year, I think last year was a pretty close game too. I mean, Georgia barely won that game last year. So, But like I said, Mississippi too, Ole Miss, they're pretty good. But I don't think they're good enough on defense. Tennessee, same thing. I think Joe Milton's too inconsistent for them to win that game. I think he's going to struggle. So I think it's a possibility. But my best bet is Missouri next week. We'll probably get them the hardest. Yep, that's just my take on it.
Millis is saying inside the comment box, they're like, calm down. It's only the playoff rankings. Doesn't mean shit right now. It really doesn't, but it does because the thing that I think matters, and I appreciate the comment, the thing about it is what matters to me is how the playoff committee, like what the criteria is, what they're using. And they're using quality wins, which they rightfully should. And they're starting to point a little bit to schedule strength, which I think bodes well for Alabama over, some of the Pac-12 teams, which haven't played a strong schedule. Now, Washington has that Oregon, win that they're living off of. So, I think schedule strength is certainly going to come into play when they see these teams. But also, they did like Florida State. And this Michigan team, they're still undefeated. The good thing about Michigan is the fact that they are going to play Penn State and Ohio State still. But this sign stealing stuff, like every time you look at social media, I think it was somebody tweeted out that I think it was Josh Pate that said that if you zoom into the glasses of the Stallions guy, he has the recording glasses on that are Ray-Bans. And he was on the sidelines of Central Michigan. So like, this dude gets down there, has these sunglasses on that can record, because now some of these glasses coming out, you can record stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen, man, in terms of all that. And the committee member said, look, these are allegations at this point. None of it is facts. And our job is to grade the teams based off, how they look on the field, but not, kind of the off the field type stuff. I just think it's comical when they say that. And they also have the Michigan athletic director that they're meeting with, 10 minutes before they sit down to rank the teams. It's dirty.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting for them to do that. But, my whole take on Michigan allegations, I think everyone does it. But when you have someone in the stands actually recording someone's signals, I don't think that's right. Like, that's just my personal opinion, Like, you shouldn't do that. Like, no way. Like, if that was the case, then everybody could do it. But no, like, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I think you
have evidence. And you have evidence that, that I think someone came out with, that they had someone buy, like, a couple of tickets, like, to a couple of games, and had someone sit in the stands actually holding their phone. I don't know how true that is, but that'll be crazy if that is actually true.
Yeah, and then there was someone else said that they were like, if you pick up your phone and you're in the stands, they said, based off where the stands are, like, how good of a look can you get at the actual signals that they're calling in? I was like, you have everybody on it. You have, I think the FBI is also like in on this too. So, get your popcorn out. The first college football playoff rankings just dropped. Michigan keeps winning, whatever it is. Let's look at Michigan's schedule real quick, Marcel. Then I want to get your take on this whole Dabo Sweeney thing. So stay with me real quick. All right. What we're looking at is the Wolverines schedule right here. And the committee said strength of schedule matters, which it should. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. that is the light. Hey, Rutgers and Nebraska, that is the lightest front end schedule ever in college football. Now, granted, they are getting the style points, and their defense is playing great. But I mean, what would Alabama's schedule be? What would LSU's schedule be? What would Georgia's schedule be? I don't know. What would Washington's schedule be against a schedule like this? I guess that Michigan.
Right? The crazy thing about it is I don't know who does Michigan scheduling, but they've been having that similar schedule for about 2 years now. So me personally, I know it's kind of biased. I went to Michigan State, but I don't have like any type of thing. If you win, you win. Good for you, good for your team. But they've been having an easy schedule for a while now. So I mean, I would like to see them face against at least at least three top 25 teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that's just my whole take on it.
Yeah, I mean, but this schedule here at the back, is going to get juicy. And this game against Purdue, everyone. I mean, can you imagine the ratings on these next couple of Michigan games? Michigan is going to go through the absolute roof, and then people were saying that Jim Harbaugh, his contract, his big long-term contract was going to get cut off the table, but then sources that were close to Michigan said that's not the truth, and that they're still trying to offer him this big-time schedule. It seems like Jim Harbaugh is always kind of circulated as kind of one of those names up in the college football, kind of whether he's leaving or this and that, and sometimes, I mean, Michigan fans, I'm sure, feel it's like a witch hunt. Right. Okay, Marcel, I want to ask you, and I asked Mike from Austin on Dabo Sweeney. Defended himself yesterday or a couple days ago against a caller who was going after him about his salary, being that Clemson is only 4-4 and this and that. And, Dabo Sweeney came back and said, you've forgotten what we've done, what we've built. This is the type of season that, teams go through and, kind of go to hell. What was your take on the whole Dabo Sweeney deal?
I don't think he's wrong. I mean, he's in a rebuilding process. He just got a young quarterback. I mean, you lost your defensive coordinator. That was a really good defense. I don't know. I don't think their defense is the same as it used to be. Now he's at Oklahoma. He's having success. So I mean, it just shows how good as he is as a coach. But like I said, I think he's just in a rebuilding process. I think, well, not every coach goes through it. I mean, you look at Alabama. Like we have the number one recruiting, and we change coaches every year. But I think that could be an excuse. Someone I could see the other side saying like, hey, it could be BS. But Alabama's one of one. But just my take on it, I think he's just in a rebuilding process. So it happens.
And I think on top of that, I mean, there's going to be coaches that are in programs that are going to suffer just because of the fact of this NIL space, the transfer portal. And you got to be able to, pay for some of these top type players. And I don't know if Clemson has the overall funds to compete for some of these top level players. And you look at some of the stances from these coaches because they know what they have in store. I mean, who was it? Stoops from Kentucky was saying that donors need to pony up more to compete with Georgia. Georgia has the guys. They have the facilities. They've been able to develop those guys at a higher rate than Kentucky has. Absolutely. But do they have, a bigger, bank account to get players that they want than Kentucky? 1,000,000%. Now, basketball is a different story, but, football pays the bills at Georgia, and boosters, donors know that. And, same thing here at Alabama. I mean, you think about this, okay? If you follow Alabama's social media account, okay? Do you guys? I'm sure you guys do. Twitter account.
Yep.
You see them, they've tweeted out 2 tweets that have really nothing to the football team. Nothing. One was to watch a movie on Amazon Prime about a space movie, right? And everybody was freaking out. And another one was to buy a video game. You think somebody got a hold? You think their account got hacked? Or do you think those are sponsored?
Yeah, they're definitely sponsors for sure.
Because look, even a program like Alabama that has all this money, they are also reaching down into the cookie jar for even more funds. Those are big time ads because when Alabama has 1 point whatever million followers on Twitter, Instagram, they can go to whoever and say, pay us X for this. Right? I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. 100%. You're going to see it more and more.
I think Nick Saban is a great businessman. I mean, you see him doing, different commercials with Affleck, with Dion and stuff. So I can't put it against, Nick Saban because he's a great businessman as well.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is like with Alabama's now their kind of like their fan funding program. They have their own vodka. The offensive linemen have their own beef jerky. I mean, this is kind of the world that we're in. So I don't, Dabo's going to have to adapt and add these different elements like Alabama is to be able to continue to survive. Otherwise, I mean, that program is just going to continue to go downwards, and other teams are going to, scoop the top like a Florida State. All right, Marcel, I appreciate you, man. Anything else before we bounce out?
I would like to say I think these next couple of weeks are going to be crucial in terms of rankings.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to pay attention. Like you said earlier, we need Texas to lose. Like we absolutely have to have them lose. Like Oregon and Washington, I think both of them will lose, but we absolutely need Texas to lose. If they don't, I could see committee, saying like, hey, they won against you guys. So, man, it's kind of, a situation where we can't do anything about it.
I appreciate you calling in, man. Thanks for the support, Marcel.
All right, thank you.
See you. All right, man. There's Marcel. We got a 10 spot, and then Jonathan, I'll get to your question about the jerky. I appreciate you guys joining. Hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. Stay tuned. I got Coach Saban's SEC teleconference, which will be dropping at 11, and I'll have more coverage for you guys, throughout the day. We also got Coach Saban tonight at 6 at the podium as we get you geared up for Alabama and LSU, 6:45 p.m. kickoff on CBS. Aaron, I appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Kyle, the committee emphasizing strength of schedule is a win for us because it undoubtedly helps us in the long run. How much weight do you believe a W over the number one offensive team will provide this weekend? I think beating LSU does this for Alabama. Number one, you're right. I think the schedule of strength, as soon as they started speaking about schedule of strength on that teleconference last night, my ears perked up because I was like, okay, all right, that bodes well for Alabama, a team kind of there in the back, of the line trying to work their way up in the rankings. And I think it goes again, and they might be setting this up for like the Pac-12, kind of telling you that the Pac-12 has to win out to be able to really get a spot because their schedule of strength isn't going to be able to propel them over a team like Alabama who has had a gauntlet of a schedule. So this game for Alabama against LSU is monumental in terms of grabbing another quality win. And what works out really well, there's two things. Number one is Texas beat Alabama, which is a huge deal, right? I mean, it's going to come into play. But also with that said, is if Alabama can get a head-to-head win over LSU, the other team that beat LSU was Florida State, right? So when you start comparing resumes and you start to look at, who beat who and this and that, conference champs, if Florida State is praying right now, that LSU beats Alabama. And I promise you what will happen at Florida State is this will be another win for Florida State and Mark Norvell if LSU beats Alabama, because Mike Norvell will say this. He won't say it, but Florida State fans will. They'll say, listen, Florida State beat LSU. We're a better program than Alabama. 100%. And they're going to broadcast that, and they'll come out with some graphic that, how it is, because everybody's trying to position themselves for these playoff rankings. So they are praying that LSU beats Alabama. They'll be like, yep, come to Florida State, and we've surpassed Nick Saban and this and that. And, of course, Alabama, the graphic that'll be tweeted out will be Alabama is eliminated from the playoffs. We all know what Alabama has to do to make the playoffs. If Alabama really wants to accomplish everything, they just have to win out, period. There's no way an Alabama team that wins the SEC championship loses out on making the playoffs. 1,000,000%. Appreciate the super chat. Jonathan asking me about the jerky. Yeah, so Roll Tide, they have the offensive lineman came together with a jerky. I am very particular about beef jerky, Jonathan. I come from New Mexico, right? Part of cattle country. The jerky out west is completely different than the jerky in the south. It's not even close. So the jerky that I am accustomed to. So number one, the jerky is, I would say it's like a 6 out of 10, to be honest. I'm not going to say it's a 10 out of 10 by any means, because it's not. They need to work on it. And if they want honest feedback about the product, you have to get it. That's how business works. Like, people have to tell you the truth. The jerky in New Mexico, when my mom comes out to see me, or when I go back to New Mexico, I'm bringing back bags of jerky and giving to my friends. And the difference is this with the jerky, is the jerky in New Mexico is thin. It's very thin and it's very dry, to where you could just basically like cut it and it snaps off and you put it in your mouth and it just dissolves. That's how good the jerky is. And that's kind of what I'm accustomed to, a drier one. This one is a little bit more bitey. It's a little bit more chewy, and it's moist. It's okay. The flavors were good. I just have, that's my take on the jerky. Maybe I'll do a jerky call-in show at some point. Yeah, you should try it out and then come back and check it out. I mean, definitely worth, supporting the offensive linemen and checking it out now that they have it. They also have Alabama, which is their collective, also has a vodka and something else that they have. But the Roll Tide jerky is we're trying out. I just, it wasn't I'm just accustomed to a different jerky. What's up, John? I see you inside the comment box, man. Call in. I'm a Buckeye. Still think Georgia should be number one. I think that, listening to the committee, their strength of schedule, or their 2 wins, Notre Dame and Penn State, propelled you guys to be number one over Georgia, that doesn't necessarily have a quality win, I guess. I mean, is Kentucky a quality win? Is Auburn? Is Florida? I'll tell you what, it was a quality quarter that Georgia played against Auburn when Brock Bowers completely took over that game. And I think they did play 4 quarters of play against Florida, 1,000,000%. I mean, Kirby Smart's been feeling it. And I think Kirby Smart kind of likes the fact that his program is somewhat laying in the weeds as well. I mean, because this is perfect for Kirby Smart in terms of where, because this is called reverse rat poison. Rat poison is when you're number one, like you got the target on your back. Reverse rat poison, which Georgia doesn't have that much anymore, is where you're number 2, because what he did was he printed that out and he put it in the locker room and he has everybody looking. He's like, look, nobody believes in you anymore. That's what Coach Saban's been doing. That's why Coach Saban's been loving it, right? So, being ranked lower in the rankings only adds fuel to the fire, and people are dialed in on Georgia and Missouri. People are dialed in on Michigan because of sign stealing. Ohio State, they did a good job. Look, it wasn't the best performance against Wisconsin, but they still have the pieces. And your wide receiver, Marvin Harrison, balling out of control still. That's an elite wide receiving unit. Appreciate you watching the show, by the way. Raphael's with me. I only like dry jerky. Me too. And I haven't had this type of jerky. I don't even know how to pronounce that, Raf. But the dry jerky for me only. That's kind of the jerky that I'm rolling with. If you guys missed it earlier, I showed you guys what a 12-team playoff bracket would look like. Let's look at it one more time. This will be fun. I like it. It's going to make for a good, long, nice college football season. But that's okay with me. More content, more time to talk about football. Bama, Oklahoma, and I guess I guess in this scenario, these the next games, like for example, if Alabama was to beat Oklahoma and then play Ohio State, I think that game would be at Ohio State, right? Am I reading that right? So theoretically, you're going to get some interesting home games in the playoffs, and then the Final Four, those would be the playoff games, right? I think that's how it's going to work going forward. But here's kind of a look at how things would look like, in the 12-team situation. I love the 12. And even in March Madness, the 12 versus 5 is always dangerous. So is the 7 and 10. Same thing with this bracket. Missouri and Washington? Hell yeah. I'm loving that all day. Texas and Ole Miss, that would be an amazing game. 6 and 11. I like all these matchups, to be honest. Those would be fun. Second round projected matchups, I guess, for sake of it, Bama versus Ohio State, Florida State versus, I guess let's go with Missouri. Missouri could be a dark horse in this bracket over here. Texas and Georgia. You got Georgia, and then you got, I guess, Oregon and Michigan. Oregon and Michigan would be a hell of a game. I love that game. That'd be a nice Rose Bowl game. All right, got another super chat coming in from Aaron. I appreciate you, man. I don't foresee Ohio State number 1 because of Georgia's upcoming game. When do you think Georgia moves back to 1 if they do? I would say, soon. If they're able to put away Missouri, I think that because what the committee is looking for is basically just a quality staple win against, let's say, a top 15 team. And if they're able to do that and play a complete game against Missouri, and even if they're not ranked number 1, because, this is all just hypothetical stuff right now anyways. But if they do it against, I'll tell you this, Aaron, if Georgia beats Missouri handedly and then they beat Ole Miss handedly, they're back at the number 1 spot, 1,000,000%. Because those are 2 tough games back to back that you're going to have to play at an extremely high level. You're going to have to play 4 quarters of football to be able to beat those 2 teams. The good news is for Georgia, each of those games are in Athens, Georgia, which really works out for Georgia, which is fine because it's been the same thing for Alabama. Alabama's, gauntlet was Arkansas, Tennessee. They're in it right now. This is the last game of that gauntlet. Those games have been at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Ole Miss, right? You look at Alabama's schedule, it's been very favorable for Alabama in the sense that the difficult games have been at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Texas, Ole Miss, right? Arkansas, that was homecoming. Tennessee, at an extra week to prepare for LSU. So, yeah, the schedule for Alabama has 1,000,000% been challenging. But in terms of having the games at home, it's been really, really beneficial for Alabama to have those games in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Appreciate the super chat. All right, fam. I got to get going right now. I got Coach Saban's SEC teleconference, but I appreciate you guys calling in, joining the show today. I appreciate you guys more than you guys know. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, talking college football with you guys. Kyle Henderson right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Have a nice day, and we'll catch you soon.